How you doing, folks? Well, I wanted to start this video by offering a heartfelt thank you to everybody who has offered their words of support and encouragement for what I'm dealing with this car. Um, yes, it has been getting me down a little bit, but to be honest with you, one of the big motivating factors, aside from the support from my wife and family and that, is you guys, and I really do appreciate it. So I'm going to keep going with it, and I'm going to get to the end, and hopefully we'll see it through to completion, and I'll be happy with the end result. Well, it is an absolute scorcher today here in Ireland, and it's about 22 degrees, which is unseasonably warm actually, to be honest. And I am out doing a bit on the Beetle because yeah, I'm going to keep going on it. So let me show you around my progress so far this morning. Well, the first thing I did was I actually pulled all of the headliner and carpets out because they were an absolute disaster. So there was no point in actually leaving them in. They were going to have to be refitted anyway. And they were only kind of tentatively in. They were horsed into the car and made to look reasonably presentable until I pulled at them. So yeah, they're all out. I'd say I'm probably going to need a new headliner, but the carpets I'd say are probably salvageable, and that's good because they're actually quite expensive. Anyway, let's have a look inside the car. So in around the back here you can see that I have been busy with the soundproofing. So yeah, the twin Weber carburetors that are on the engine that are going into this are quite droney, so it's important to kind of make sure that you don't have too much noise coming into the car from them. You know, I mean, it's not a race car, it's supposed to be a road car, and it's nice having the noise of the carbs coming into the car when you're accelerating, but when you're on a motorway and you have sustained high RPM, it gets kind of annoying pretty quickly. So areas I've soundproofed: there, up around there, down over the rear wheel arches, along there, along the rear firewall, same on the other side then as well. And this is a very important part to do on a Beetle, is first of all up on the roof line. Now those pieces on either side are actually stuffed down into the gap between the roof and the structure, but if you remember, I went around all of them with shuts anyway, so that's not going to cause too much of a problem with causing rot. And anyway, it's closed cell foam, so it's not absorbent. So let's have a look in the engine bay now. A massive amount of the noise from the carburetors was projected up through the holes up here and same on the other side. So what I actually did there was I rolled up some of that closed cell foam and wedged it up in there. So that will stop any noise getting up inside there, and I did the same on the other side. It's not a tidy job, but you can't see it. And the other thing I have is brand new insulation boards for the engine firewall. These are the correct ones that actually go onto the car. Now I noticed there's no holes in it for attaching it to the firewall, so we're gonna have to make a few holes, but that's not the biggest problem in the world. But it's kind of just a hardboard type thing, and essentially all that happens is it just goes along there, and we're gonna put that in. And then what I will do is I'm gonna put the engine bay seal in, and I'm going to have a look at routing some fuel lines because yeah, I want to prepare to put the engine in. Alright, so it's actually pretty straightforward. So what I can do is I'm going to take it back out again, and there's little prongs that basically stick through the sound deadening pad, and if I stick them straight out, they should just poke straight through, and then I can just bend them over, and then that's that basically in. As I said, it's straightforward enough. Now I did have to reroute the wiring for the number plate light, but that's not a big deal. I will just put a cable tie on there. I'm in two minds about putting the sound deadening pads on either side, and that's simply because of the fact that I've actually got access panels inside the inner wings for the carburetors. Those of you with twin carburetors will know exactly why I've done that, because getting at them is a pain in the ass when the engine's actually fitted, and also you have to remove the carbs in order to remove the engine, and trying to get at the front bolt or nuts on the manifolds to get them off is an absolute pain in the face. So yeah, it seemed like a sensible thing to do to get those access panels put in. It's one of the few things that the bodywork guy actually did right, so wonders never cease. So at least that's in place, and yeah, I will be able to put the carbs on when the engine's actually fitted then. So I'm looking forward to that bit. That's going to be actually a nice part of the job. Anyway, let's get that sound deadening pad back out and we'll get that fitted anyway. Alright, so now it's just a case of bending them over, and then that's what that basically in. It does a nice job of finishing off the engine bay as well. And then I can look at putting in the engine bay seal, the engine lid seal, and some fuel lines in that as well. And we can then have a look at the engine. Okay, so you can see there's two pieces of seal here, okay? They're both slightly different actually. This one is basically just one single section. And if you look at this one here, it actually splits out like that. Okay, so this one goes along the back of the car and this one goes up over the gearbox bell housing, okay? So it's going to be great fun trying to get these in, I reckon. Partly because of the fact that the channel that they go into is full of paint and some of it has been crushed over. I went around some of it with the screwdriver to just try and pry it back open again, but we'll see how we get on. Let's start with this one anyway. This is the one that goes over the bell housing. A nice man on YouTube actually called VW Jawbreaker, that's an interesting name, has an instructional video on how to do this. Now he used cornstarch to lubricate the seal, and annoyingly it's supposed to slide in. Yeah, right, that could be interesting. Well, we'll find out I suppose as we go along. I think I'm going to have to straighten out that bit that's up over the gearbox that was going to it at some point or another. But yeah, I think what I might do is I might actually use some, I'm not using cornstarch, it's just weird. I'm going to think of something else to use. You know what, I know they say you're not supposed to use greases and oils and stuff like that on seals, but in fairness, it's not like it's not like it's a bushing or anything like that, so I'm going to just try a bit of WD-40 and see how we get on with that first of all. Alright, there's one of two engine bay seals in now. You can see there's a bit overlapping on either end, but I expect with a bit of shrinkage that's going to shorten a bit because of the fact that I've been stretching it for so long. This is a minefield of innuendo, this conversation. Yeah, so anyway, it's I'm going to leave it be and leave those little bits trailing off down the end. And now we're going to try and get the other seal in, so that should be great fun altogether. I'm really looking forward to this. Alright, so fluting around with the engine commenced a few days ago actually, and I'm only just getting back to it now. I wanted to try and get a few of the other jobs out of the way first of all before kind of getting stuck back into it. And I was kind of having a think about what I was going to do with the fan shroud. So I've decided I am actually going to use the 36 horsepower style fan shroud because it looks cool, and also I have actually transferred the flaps into it, so yeah, I'm going to fit that and we will get everything set up and basically have the engine ready to fit to the car. So I have a 2 horsepower Briggs & Stratton. I have a 1.5 horsepower Lister engine, which has a teapot on the top of it for some inexplicable reason. And over here I have a 1915cc performance tuned engine with counter-rated crank, lightened flywheel, balanced bottom end, Engel 120 camshaft, pair of twin Webers on it, match ported, polished and forged pistons and rods. And I have a nice exhaust to put onto that. So yeah, I think we'll pop this into it. What do you reckon? Beast. Yeah, okay, enough pissing about. Of course this is what's going into it, but there's a few little modifications I need to make to it before it goes in. First things first, I have a different fan shroud to put onto it. It's one of the nicer arch-shaped ones. I want to clean up some of the tinware, and I want to change out the heat exchangers for a pair of large bore J-tubes because the heat exchangers are too restrictive. I have a vintage speed exhaust for this full stainless unit, and it's an absolute thing of beauty, but the problem is the two front cylinders are just getting stifled by the inner diameter of those heat exchangers. And I did actually pick up a set of large bore heat exchangers. I know they're available, but when I saw them, there's no fins on the tube inside the outer casing, so they're absolutely useless, and I don't understand what the point of them would actually be. So I decided to go down a different route, and that was to use the J-tubes and have an auxiliary heater inside the car. So I actually have an auxiliary heater to fit, which I'm going to be doing at a later stage. So that's going to be another project in itself, and it means that we'll have proper heaters and demisters, because I want this to be a proper cruising road car. I don't want it to be, it's not a track car, so it needs to have a few creature comforts in it. So yeah, anyway, let's start by taking the carburetors off this, because they need to come off in order to fit the engine in the first instance. You'll have to excuse the noise in the background. There's a Gagan with a leaf blower there making a racket, and it's kind of annoying, but anyway. I think that actually might be a 4-stroke one. If it was a 2-stroke one, that would especially be going through my head. I hate the noise of 2-stroke engines. I just hate the damn things. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, they're awful. Right, okay. Anyway. Yeah, right. So carbs off first of all. So what I need to do is I need to disconnect the linkage. So we'll take the linkage off first, and then we can worry about taking the carbs off. Okay, so we'll disconnect the linkage, the rods to go down to the carbs, and just put the nuts back on. And we'll take the crossbar off afterwards. It's just a wiring harness. You'll see, if you go through my wiring harness video, you'll see that I actually have a multi-plug connector in the car to just plug the whole engine's wiring harness into. Velocity stacks. They actually do make a difference. Now, there's springs in each end of that linkage rod, so I'm just going to get some insulation tape, just tape it over. Ported for your pleasure. Or mine, actually, in this case. So yeah, you can get a look down inside in the ports in the head there now. This is going to be some machine, so I'm dying to take it out for a proper spin. Okay, so lunch has been achieved, and so has fan shroud installation. Job's a good one. Do think I need to give that pulley a bit of a clean though for some reason. It's looking pretty scabby, but we'll get to that now in a minute. Anyway, right, so that is that's that. Let's get the oil cooler deflector tubing put on. That's down here. So we'll put that on next. So yeah, next thing to do is I have a nice set of Vintage Speed stainless steel J tubes to go with my Vintage Speed exhaust. They are really good exhausts, by the way, folks. If you're looking for a decent exhaust, it's the only job, to be honest. So they come with I'll figure these out anyway. Let's offer them up onto the engine anyway, and we have gaskets, and we have nuts, and yeah, so that's basically to allow us to connect it onto the back box, basically. Alright, so that's the J-tubes fitted. The next thing to do is to clean out the bell housing and to make sure the spline shaft is nice and clean, because you want that to be able to slide nicely into the centre of the clutch. I'm in two minds as to whether or not to change the throwout bearing. I think I probably will before I fit the engine. Seems to make good sense in my mind anyway. Okay, so I have a couple of niceties to fit to this car over the next while. Least of which is the, not the least of which is the Mazda RX-8 seats, and the engine is a 1915cc engine that has been ported out, match ported, and there's a counterweighted crank light and bottom end, Engel 120 cam, and Weber 40 IDF carbs on it, so that should go nicely. Other things I have to put onto it are this brake servo here, which I'm thinking I'm actually going to install there. So it would seem to make sense, because if I ever had to do anything under here, it's not going to be in the way. Like, the last thing I want to have to do is, like, say for example I had to remove the fuel tank for whatever reason. I don't want to have to remove the brake servo in order to do that, because that's just needless faffing. That's how modern cars are designed, and this is not a modern car. So yeah, I'm thinking there. And I have an electric vacuum pump for it, so no need to run vacuum lines from the engine. I'll have that coming on with the fuel pump, so there'll be a relay for that. So that should work nicely. There's a bracket for the brake servo as well. And another thing I have to install is an auxiliary heater. Those of you who know Beetles will know that the J-tubes I'm running on the engine preclude the use of a heater, preclude the use of heat off the engine, basically because heat exchangers will be the alternative there, and I'm deleting the heat exchangers and putting J-tubes on to get the gases flowing a bit better out of the engine. So yeah, as a result of that, what I'm doing is I'm going to put a diesel powered auxiliary heater, and I'm going to put it here on the parcel shelf in the back. And what I'll have is I'll have the two ducts coming off it and going down onto the pipes into the heater channels down here. So that means that it'll be supplying hot air to all the places hot air would originally have been supplied to in a Beetle. And yeah, I have the battery in just because I was testing a couple of the electrics. So start motor's working for a start. So that's a nice little victory. But you know what, folks, I'm knackered, so I'm going to go in and call it a day at this point. So the next job is going to be to fit the engine, so please don't miss that, because that should be interesting. And I will make sure that in that video I have the engine started as well. So that's why I wanted to make sure the start motor was in place, even if it's just off a can of petrol or whatever, you know, that's fine, but definitely want to make sure it does start. So I am dying to hear this engine, because I got a lot of work done on it while I had the car off getting getting repaired. So yeah, anyway, let's leave it there, folks. Thanks very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall talk to you in a future video. Thanks for watching.